We are very happy to host this exhibition by Sandra Boeschenstein. It has been a wonderful period of work of her here. And of course, we are very happy for the proposal made by the Institute of Advanced Studies. This proposal has been designed a long time ago, maybe 3 years, 4 years ago, before the pandemics. And when in the former period here at the Centro MariAntonia, but it's absolutely connected to our guidelines, our principles of work here in the Maria Antonia Center. Basically, for its very subtle approach to science and the connections between science and art. These are absolutely key to the role, the cultural role of the university in the fields of the arts. So the whole exhibition is a very sensitive approach to knowledge, to the boundaries of knowledge, to the boundaries between different fields of knowledge, optics, physics, language, visuality in general, mathematics, drawing. Of course, drawing is a key element of this exhibition. Designing and drawing knowledge and the perspective of knowledge in the future is probably a very important role that art might undertake in the future. So I'm very proud to host it here and very happy that the Institute brought this idea to the Centro MariAntonia. Of course, I'd like to thank the foundation, the Swiss Foundation, Pro Helvetia, the General Consulate of Switzerland, who here in São Paulo, who has also supported the exhibition since its beginning, and the whole group of workers here at the Centro MariAntonia with whom Sandra has interacted in this past 20 days, living among us. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you very much, Ari. Welcome.
It's my turn. So happy to be here today to finally open this exhibit that, as Professor João Lira said, was began to be devised in 2018. In 2018, I had the opportunity to be in Bielefeld in Germany, where the first Institute for Advanced Studies connected to universities was founded in 1968. So it was the 50th anniversary of CIF, that Zentrum, in German the name, Zentrum für interdisziplinarische Forschung, Center for Interdisciplinary Research. And at that time, I was coordinating the network of institutes for advanced studies connected to universities, UBIAS or UBAIAS. And so I was there, and it was a very beautiful ceremony. But one of the good surprises was to see that CIF had already an experience of an artist in residence. And the artist in residence was Sandra Boeschenstein. And so I was very impressed by the idea and by her work, and coming back and talking to Martin, who was a former and always an acting director of the Institute, came the idea to bring Sandra here also to be maybe the first artist in residence of our Institute for Advanced Studies at the University of São Paulo. So this idea began in 2018, as Professor João Lira said, before the pandemics. It took some time to get support from Pro Helvetia. Thank you so much. And the consulate also is part of the effort. And when it came to define where to put the exhibit, where to show the exhibit, obviously the first option would be at the campus in Butantan. But the idea, Martin came that it should be in a more in a place more central to the city of São Paulo. So you would have more people not connected directly to the university having the opportunity to know this, exactly what Professor João Lira said, this diverse aspects of human knowledge and production and sensibilities, and see this how rich it can be if the things are if these elements of human production are interconnected. So it came here to Maria Antonia, and first with Professora Lucia, she was very receptive, and then SARS-CoV-2 appeared and we had to postpone it, and Sandra was very patient, maybe a few months from now, maybe more months, anyhow. And so when it came to be feasible, we had a question mark, because Professor Lucia, finished her term, and there will be a new director at the center, and would he be, she or he, but we knew it was a he, would he be receptive? Would we have to begin telling the story from the beginning all again and trying to convince him? And it was not necessary. After the first two words, Professor João Lira opened the house, opened his heart, opened the team, and so thank you so much for having this first attempt of the Institute to explore the word advanced. Always we are asked sometimes, and we ask ourselves also from time to time, or sometimes very often, what does it mean to be advanced? And so I think being advanced means exactly what Professor Lira mentioned, this connection between the diverse aspects of human production, human knowledge, outcomes of our capabilities. Advanced also means being not only in our bubble, but coming to a place where we are not so at home in the sense that it is the campus where the institute is, but coming here, and we feel now that we are also at home by you and by your team. And advanced means also being able to have people here, talented people, brilliant people as Sandra, from other cultures, and share with us her sensitivity, her beautiful art that is here. So I would like to make two final comments. The first is a personal impression. I had the opportunity to visit and began feeling your exhibit, and I was particularly touched by the connection between two of the arts pieces that you put there. One is when you say that you have to repeat a feat 3 times in order to distinguish it from a miracle, which is here. And then there you have the pencils, where you have 1 pencil accident and then 3 pencils. This is already a paradigm shift. And so again, the number 3. And I was also very touched because in the tradition that I was created, the Jewish tradition, the number 3 is used to make something which is, let's say, occasional, something permanent. So it's in Hebrew it's called chazakah. So it means it becomes something strong. It becomes something really effective. So I think I just began looking. So I'm very touched. Thank you so much, Sandra, also for touching us here. And the last words are again to thank Centro MariAntonia, Pró-Reitoria de Cultura e Extensão Universitária, Professor João Lira, and the whole team. Martin, you are our eternal former but acting director. The team of the Institute who also helped. Some of them are here, and Provesia, the consulate, and hopes that we'll have from now until November people coming, being impressed, and opening more avenues for contact between disciplines of knowledge, between people, between countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, you all that are here with us this morning. Thank you so much, Sandra, for this opportunity of having you and your work in this first Artist in Residence session at the Institute for Advanced Studies, as Ari Plonsky has mentioned in his presentation. And I think it's just to contextualize this idea of having artists in the Institute for Advanced Studies. The principle, in a sense, is that it is interdisciplinary. It is a place for different minds, different ideas, different practices, or even different theoretical approaches can come together. So there are interdisciplinary research and conversations. They are easy, not easy. Nothing is easy, but some that are more, that have a sort of a more natural way, like in social sciences when different scientists talk between each other, or even in physics and mathematics, there are always approaches and relationships. But the difficulty is to bring together people from works or areas like Sandra, that has a very specific production, as you have seen, together with those others that compose the Institute for Advanced Studies team. That is not necessarily a fixed team, but it's composed by different researchers from different disciplines, from different experiences and different formations. So I'm very happy that art is with us in this place, having the opportunity to bring Sandra that has an experience in other institutes for advanced studies. So it's not common, and it's also quite difficult to really to have artists working together with artists. And this is something that I think, and with the words of Ari, that the Institute is not only receiving this first experiment, no, but maybe fostering and giving institutional support and looking for other institutional supports to have more artists in this environment, in this milieu. So we haven't rehearsed, so it's more like an informal talk. We won't take that much. It's now half past noon, so it's a conversation, and we would like to also to open to you. So we would like you to pose questions for especially Sandra in relation to her work. But I think starting is interesting. Once I said about interdisciplinarity and you as an artist, how you see your work inside a university.
Yes, first I want to thank to everyone who made this precious experience for me possible. Yes, now I like to answer to that. Yes, this is my third experience, or my fourth experience to stay as an artist among scientists, and I really love it because there are experiences you could not get staying among artists or among specialists for arts. I give an example. When I stayed for half a year at a place, then when even especially scientists, people from humanities is somehow closer to my field. But when people from scientists knock at your door and want to share something, and they come in and they don't look at what is at the wall as an art piece, but as a visual phenomena. And we just start to discuss these visual phenomena. So this is really very refreshing. And I think the important thing for me is to never to lose that we have very different qualities within science and within arts, and not to meet in the center and to mix them up and to lose everything, but to sharpen ourselves, the position, the own position, through observing the other and through discussion with someone else who goes for a very profound research, because it's research what we share.
Yeah, I think this is something that is interesting, because what brings together art and science in this same place that we call university is definitely research. And of course, in a way, when we considered the art production in this regard, is that art production that definitely relates to research, or that has as a basis a quite substantial thinking and also the questioning. And I think that apart from research, what this exhibition does is to question our templates, to question our the a prioris, in a sense, of the way that we think. So I think one of the roles of art being together with science is that we can share, let's say, this more uneasy way of looking at things and to produce knowledge out of that. So in this regard, Sandra, I would like that you could also talk about the process of your work. How you pose those questions that we can share with you in this space. How this comes, where this comes out.
May I first say, add some remarks to the term of research, because this is a very interesting thing when I go to, I'm working among scientists. When I say that I'm doing research, or there are so many misunderstandings that they think that now I jump into the field of science, because they claim that research is always scientific research. So I'm always already used to that, and I love it just to provoke and to say, yes, research is much older than science. It's much older. What is the basic quality of research? When human beings started to go for complex things with repetition and variation. So this started very early, and I'm always happy to start a discussion with scientists, because they think that we come on their field when we take the word research in our mouth. So this is just a starting point of has been a starting point of very interesting and as well funny discussions. Yes. So to your question, where those questions come from, I was always fascinated by complex questions, and especially by that human condition, that we have the ability of complex thinking, but that is always embedded in a body. And I think this we should never forget as well now with all those new tendencies of cyborgs and so on. I think my work is really fostering that we do never forget that this body-based thinking is very important. So this is something that you can see in here. And then as I started to study philosophy, and I wanted to study both parallel, but this was not yet the time where this was where people realized that arts and philosophy share a huge common field, so it was not possible to connect to institutes. So I decided for arts, because I was not afraid to lose this attitude to go for too big questions, but knowing that they are far too big. And I think this is as well a specialty for artists. I can deal with a question which is far too big, but knowing that it's far too big, and just looking how I although can move with that, and I although can go on with that. So this just as a first step of my answer. Or shall I continue?
No, I think
Yeah.
you should continue, because
Yes.
I think it's interesting that in a way knowledge comes out of questioning and also of the doubt.
Yes.
Of having
Yes.
doubt of
Yes.
some processes
Yes.
that they have been established.
Yes.
So how do you relate to that, and how art can or cannot contribute
Yes.
to this ideas or this common ground, let's say?
So I think humor and doubt is a wonderful combination. So I really declare them as my colleagues during my working process. But within combination,
humor and
doubt.
Doubt. Okay.
So and yes, when you mention doubt, this is the quality that is really needed when you deal with something that is really huge. And although we want to access it through an action, this is probably the special thing within my work or within arts in general, that we go for an action, we do something, we act with a certain media and combine it with thinking. So when I just should bring down my work or my main interest within should reduce it on 2 points. So this is the interplay of perception and thought, but out of any hierarchy. This is very important, because for a very long time within history as well in philosophy, so there was that the importance of thought, and then a bit lower there was perception. So I really think it's needed that we look at them simultaneously on eye level. This is very important, and then I'm very much I think the most important zones of the energy which I'm working with is to bring medias together, but to confront them. But as I mentioned before, as well, this without any hierarchy. So what can happen when we bring language and image together, or what happens when we bring things and image or language together, and even a specific situation, and we do not follow those rules, those established rules, which I often as well observe within science, that language is so much more developed, and many times image is just there just for an affirmation or to illustrate things. So that is as well a statement that I like to make when I'm among scientists, that I use images as a primary tool of recognition, and I'm going for the epistemic qualities of images, and I think that they can be a primary access as well, not the only, but from side of arts, this is the main access. And then by, of course, first you have to design some rules, and then to choose a media, and then to go for it, but always being aware what happens, what surprise can jump in. This is as well a big difference with science. When you see it, the really hot spot is beneath, and you observe it during your process, you cannot, and it's good like that, you cannot as easy as we can jump on the other side and see that it's there is the hotspot. So just to touch some differences already.
And talking about that, I think it's interesting, and you already have seen the exhibition, that when you enter the room, there is, of course, the text that make it more rational for us, or give us the information, the basic information needed, at least to understand what the exhibition is about. And then suddenly there is a work that receives or is like a reception for us when we come in into the space. And it's monumento, but it's crossed. So what you can read there is numen. So there is this play of words that, of course, are part of your strategy as an artist to displace us as well, no? And there is someone escaping the room and escaping the questioning. I think it's interesting that from the start there is this, there is a suspension. And I think you bring, for me, in a way, everything into suspension. Then language is in suspension here, the image as well, because when you turn from experiencing the first word, you see this huge wall of drawings that, by the way, she brought it under her arms, no, from Switzerland. But it's, no, bringing the precious word, and this is the basic series, apart from the other one that is here, that name the exhibition, Grace at the Boundary of Knowledge. In Portuguese is also interesting, Encantar na fronteira do conhecimento, where you, the viewer, us observers or visitors, are confronted with images, but with also language, in 3 different languages. No? But you say image, but I think what I did that narrative, or I'm building up this narrative, because I think what is interesting in this exhibition, that it is purely analogic. You can see the material all the time. So image normally is something that we perceive and we keep it in our mind as something given or already resolved. And the problem is that the images that you provide us, they escape from us. And they more or less are doing this movement as that small figure in the beginning escaping the room. You know? So why this drawing? And I think even drawing is a language in the arts considered as a minor language. It's not like painting or sculpture.
No longer.
No longer with you. And you're bringing back the drawing to us and to discuss the materiality of the gestural movement. No, I think then crafting is ever present in this exhibition. So you can sometimes see things as an image, but then suddenly it's being deconstructed or it's being liquefied. No, so why you act with humor, but also it's a sort of you are some sort of pervert in acting as someone that provokes us to think about not only the image, as normally we see the art as something that comes out from the world of images, but also of the way of the process of producing art.
So I have to say that I do not only provoke the future spectator, but as well myself, because I would declare myself when I work as the first observer or spectator of the action and of the things that appear. So it's really like that I act somehow, and this is the precious thing with drawing, because the materiality is so thin, and it's so that you can see that when something starts to be fascinating, it's not a huge amount of material or a medial black box between you and what you see, but it must be your perception that you're fascinated by. So I would say the main actor is the perception itself. So I somehow like and love to celebrate perception, because I think as well this is the basic ability we have to have if we want to talk about politics and all those things which are more explicit. I think that attention and be aware of our perception and be able to perceive and be able to let involve ourselves is a really fundamental and basic need. So that's the reason as well why I did choose drawing as a media, because it's so reduced, it's so low-tech. I brought everything that I needed except the glass in such a box. So my main material is time, I would say. And as well, this is a decision because I really like to stay for a long time in a space and with little material, just to try with a very reduced setting, try to find somehow to get in tune with the energy of the space, but as well with the energy of the process of perceiving something. So this I don't know if I like to provoke, but I like to provoke the exposure of perception. That for sure.
Yeah, and talking about this, I think maybe we are coming to an end, because it will be interesting if there are questions from you. But Sandra, I will share with you the information that Sandra is a radical climber. She lives in Zurich, but oftenly she goes to the mountains and does these things that we see in channels like Off, or those radical images that we see people climbing up amazing and wild mountains, no? So. But she's having, even though she, and I think that's once again is important to mention, Adi, that the Maria Antonia has become an extension of an Institute for Advanced Studies. In a way, in this moment, she hasn't actually interact with the researchers and the groups, the different groups that the Institute holds, no? But she will come back. So she will have an interaction with scientists, with artists, with different also publics. So, but she, coming from Switzerland, she's now in these 20-something days in the 23rd floor of the Copain. So I would like very much to hear from you. How do you see this radical change of leaving behind your mountains, your so loved mountains that you are so acquainted and so I think maybe the relationship that you have with drawing might have some sort of relationship with yourself and the mountains. And this very much reminds me about Flusser, because I think it's a thinker that all the times relates in his thinking the qualities of research coming from science, but the qualities also coming from the arts. No? And he has this amazing book called Naturalmente, Naturally. No? So where he brings together texts that are related to different landscapes, especially mountains. So tell us your experience and how you see this crazy city where we live.
Yeah,
that is São Paulo.
For me, it's really the first time that I see such a mega city. I've never been in such a city, and then I was so happy that I could find that studio with that amazing view. And I even wanted to make this experience stronger. Therefore, till the last days before I took the flight to come here, I was climbing because I wanted really to have them, to bring those experiences very close together. And I think it's a bit similar when I confront in a radical way language and image, or when I bring together in an unusual way things and drawings. So I think when we go to complementary qualities, there is the moment where the highest turbulences and source of energy comes from, and where as well the new ideas can grow and come into the world. So into my world of perception, it was really amazing that I could see that these are the very radical poles of what is possible to let no trace as a human being, which is within the Alps. When you are out of that zone where are still you can still find a path when you go to the wilder zones. To this, you mentioned that to this end form of Anthropocene. So this was really just amazing for me, and I even thought if that as well you could call that a pure end of. So the word that something you connect something like this city with something pure. It has a paradoxical aspect, but I like it, that this radical untouched nature has something very pure, but as well this end of the scale, when I look out of my window, I cannot see anything that is unchanged and untouched, and not only once, but twice or many times. And you can see some orders, some structures, but then you can see the wild coming up, so the wild growing, because probably the speed was so fast. And I think there is something that is wild in that city, which I can connect with my experience of wilderness within the vertical mountains. So that's, and I must say as well that the first, I didn't do anything like that, but the first days, the very, very short association you sometimes have, I had the association, where is my rope, and shall I upside down, and, or shall I, because it's really this, for me, it's this sensation that I'm not used to this verticality that I'm normally used to take out my rope and start to climb. So this was very funny, just for a part of a second. I sometimes, when I arrived, had this association. So.
Right. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say something else before we? No. I just want to mention, Ari mentioned about Maria Antonia, all the help that we receive from the General Consulate of Switzerland, that we thank you once again. The Pro Helvetia, that really without Pro Helvetia we couldn't actually be here today, so that's important. But there was a lot of effort from people that I really think I need to mention here. So in the name of the team of Maria Antonia, I will mention Artur Caldeira, that did the final touches of this space. So you can see that there are so many different ways of drawing and establish a connection between the works that Sandra presents to us. But those moments of, especially the lightning, is the one that brings everything together in a sense. And Artur was very sensible and very careful on working together with us on finishing this. Behind of, Ari said about myself, but I think it's a teamwork. So Diego, it's on the camera here, and Beatriz on the other camera there. It's a research group of the Institute for Advanced Studies. We have produced recently, this is the second exhibition, and for us it's marvelous because the first exhibition, because of the pandemic as well, is entirely virtual, so it's in virtuality, and this one is entirely here with us. So we must be here to see what you have presented us. And once again, so, and I think, am I forgetting someone? I think, of course, Sandra and Raimunda representing the team of the Institute for Advanced Studies. Raimunda is serving ourselves with drinks, and Rafael, that is here, of course. Rafael is the academic manager or coordinator of the Institute, and without you, Ari, with your sensibility, and also Rafael, the Institute with you too, I think opens up for new challenges. And I thank you so much for allowing art to come in and to at least to change things or the place of things, no? So, and am I forget someone, Diego? No, of course. Then we open up for you. I will ask you to talk with the microphone because it's being recorded.
I want first to thank Martin for inviting me to be here. It's very special for me to be here in Maria Antonia. I have been here in '68, and I have managed as BPC from here for many years. But it's not this that I want to speak. I want to tell something to you, Sandra, because you speak about scientists and art, and I am a scientist. And I look this, and I say, I use it in my classes now, because you are reproducing the biological timing, the pineal gland and the cerebellum. And I don't know if you know it, but you are reproducing it because it's inside you, because you do questions. And so the eyes are not seeing, the eyes are organizing how the legs have to walk, and this is outside the seeing. You have here the biological rhythm, day and night, day and night, day and night, and everything is going okay. But when you stop the rhythm, you have a pause, and you see something very strange here. Maybe water, but it's something different. But when you look there, you see the same thing there again, in a little bit wide way. So it's something that is outside our real and day-by-day world. And you don't know if you know that many, many years ago, the Greeks called the pineal gland as the center of the alma, the soul, the center of the soul. So you have the both. I loved it. And I love the way that you question. And I will just say, I want you to comment on it. I don't think that science and art are things that are completely apart. And I don't think that science look to a point and art look to a context. I think that you have artists that only looks in a point, and artists that can put a context, you can put a context together. And you have scientists that looks in a point. And they lose themselves. They said that the egg is very bad because the egg this and this and that, and then 10 years after, the egg is very good because other scientists said. And you have somebody as Einstein that in the beginning could not think about time and space being isolated, because for him it was together and isolated. And with quantum physics came, he was the one that invited Heidelberg to the academia. So you have scientists that can see the who and artists that can see the who. I want that you comment on this on both sides of the life. I think that we meet together. And now if you go to the internet and you see the image of NASA that are online every day, of the outer space, I can see cells, and my sister that paints can see the painter of this and that. So I want that you comment this, getting together and not getting apart.
Yes. So thank you very much for your comment. And I totally agree. I would even say that there are scientists who have an artist soul and the other way around. That behave like an artist, that are able to react or let the things talking or do not. There is a very nice term by a German scientist who comes from biology, but he now is within history of science, and he calls them epistemic things. This is a beautiful term that I really like to share. I totally agree that what I think we have to save and be very careful with, arts and science started to become somehow a brand. And very often artists jump into the field of science, and I think it's the risk to lose qualities of that wide spectrum of qualities that should be there. I think we should not meet in the center and to lose everything, but we should make each other, and we should really give an effort that we can observe each other And for that, we should even choose the most radical version of ourselves that it is observable for the others. And then, what I think, then we go beyond projections, could science be and what could arts be, then we really could share the methodology, which sometimes is the same, is quite similar, because as well the dealing with something that is complex and focusing on that, how do you do that? Or the question, how do you find the right size of a question that you can start your work? So these are topics we are very close together, I think. And then it's more about mentality. There are scientists which I connect very well, that were very open-minded and curious, and others that I could not connect. But the very precious things about Centers for Advanced Studies is there, and every place I was, you really find a very, very nice selection of persons who really want to expose themselves and really want to sharpen their own position through confrontation with another, with a view from outside, and then go for the complementary and not finally go for the complementary of the qualities we have.
It's very beautiful, your work. I was wondering, you draw this yourself, right?
Yes.
Line by line.
Yes.
Where did you get this patience?
This is an interesting question, because I'm a very impatient person.
You add something before you answer. That thing has something to do with you climbing mountains.
I would say my choice for drawing in general has to do something with my climbing mountains, because you reduce what you use, the traces, you reduce them so much that you feel very much exposed to every movement. And this is the specialty of drawing, I think. This is quite, I would say, cannot say what was first, but my choice for mountain climbing and for drawing had something in common, to go for the exposure of perception at a limit, towards a limit.
I think when you are up there in the mountains, you have to be very focused. You have to be very precise and concentrate. I can see this here also. Mm-hmm. And I think both work together in your work. And when you bring science here, science is also you have a lot of accuracy in your work. When you first see this, it's very precise, and it's everything very this accuracy, and it brings rationality to this. So it's somehow very rational. And it's similar to science, it's also very precise. So it's a matter of precision here, the word precision. But when you put lemons in this precision, or tennis shoes, or this, you go to the humor side, then somehow you bring strongly art in this reasoning. And science does not do this. Yes.
Yeah, I bring art within the system or everyday life as well. So the common life as well. I rather prefer that than to bring art within. So I bring those things you use to come here and see. So shoes and lemons. So I like to connect that. And I totally agree with you that I can allow myself to make such a jump, to confront things that have nothing in common, just to have, because I want to have a look what intermediate turbulences occur and what kind of energy can raise within this untrained encounter of things and lines within this case. And this, I agree, somehow this is a, yeah, we can do as an artist, we can do it better. Probably in science it happens somehow when there is an accident, when something unforeseen happens, then probably it just drops in, or could that be?
It does, I think.
Yes, yes.
Now, science, it's also have, you put this, you bring a lot of movement to this. You are explaining us how you think, but I'm just looking, and I'm feeling this movement. So it's very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. But last but not least, we forgot someone very important to this project, that is Britta Padberg. So without Britta was the executive director of the ZIF, the Institute for Advanced Studies of Bielefeld University. She is from anthropology, no? She's from the field of social science, but she always was very sure about having a program of artists in residence at ZIF. So her persistence and the program that was established at the ZIF relates very much to this uneasiness of Britta Padberg. And she was very much keen on really fostering this idea of Sandra not only sharing her artwork in Europe, but bringing it to Brazil, so far away in the south. Thank you so much again, Sandra, and everyone that is here and has been involved in this project.